All right, Miss Kimberly. First off, thank you for being here. It's been a while since we talked. We talked a little bit off air. It's been like almost a year and a half since we last connected on video.
Yeah.
But we have corresponded back and forth at email. I'm on your email list, so I see the things you're doing and constantly, um, putting out. And I know you're active and stuff like this. But it's our reunion here
Yeah.
since last year, so this is exciting for me. So thank you for taking time out of your day for being here. This will be fun,
Yeah,
I
my
believe.
pleasure.
Um, but just so before we kind of jump into the topic at hand here, for anybody who maybe doesn't know who you are or anything like that, if you just want to give a brief background of who you are, and then one question I always like to hear because it's always different is what made you get into the authoring world, and specifically for you, you're actually helping other authors doing certain things like that. So I'm just curious, kind of, what brought you here.
Okay. Well, basically mine, we were just talking. So 10 years ago now, which seems like about the right time, and then like time has flown. So back then I was thinking of writing a children's book because I had young kids and my head was in it. All I did all day long really was seemed like reading books. And I thought, okay, well, that's something that I wanted to do and I wanted to get into. The problem is that I had a background in sales, marketing, very sort of business oriented stuff, right? Not that it was really my dream to be, and then it just sort of that's how it kind of went down. And I do have a degree in business, so it kind of fit that that's what I was doing. So I couldn't just write a book. I had to, first dive into well, how would I market? How would I do this, right? Because that's where my mind goes. And little did I realize that nobody else thought that way initially, or at least like 2013, that was still sort of quite new, right? That people would think market first, then write the book. So personally, I found that there was some stuff, but a lot of it had to be translated over. Like it wasn't really for authors, it was for some other industry, and I could kind of make it fit or whatever. Online stuff was still kind of new. Everything was really still a little bit like not quite as sophisticated as things are now. So I basically built just like, people write the book that they need. I've built the platform and the information and the I don't know, structure, I guess you could say, in order to help myself plan this career that I wanted, sort of a new career. And then what happened is that eventually, and actually quite quickly, people started coming to me for advice on, okay, well, how do you do that? Right. And I realized, well, okay, maybe there's a niche there that I'll do that. I'll share this information while I'm trying to, start my own business. Um, Long story short, it basically just evolved into this. I've done a ton of client work, and I still haven't, I've written a children's book, but I haven't published it because this has just consumed everything. And honestly, I can't say that I'm upset about it. I might go back to the other, but it's weird how life, sorts you out. And this actually is such a good fit for me in every aspect, right? In all of it. So I do get to write, but I do get to deal with people and clients. I get to focus on the things that I'm really good at, share the things I'm really good at. And because I have that interest, I can also, I guess, fine tune it to meet the needs of writers just coming up that don't have the business background. So luckily, it's worked out, and it's been quite successful for me. And I've loved the idea that I've helped a lot of people. So good on
Yeah,
every way.
I always love how life has a way of
Yeah,
turning you around, like flipping you on your head when you think you're going one direction, and it's like, nah, I don't think so. This is actually
yeah.
where you're going. and then
This is
and
where
then
it
it
is.
always it ends up, doesn't always work out, but a lot of times you end up in a better place than you would have if you would have been on like your the trajectory that you had planned on going,
What you
right?
thought. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing. And that's the other thing too, is to consider if I look back, everything that I did in my life unknowingly led to this point, which is kind of, it's only, I could only see it looking back. But, and even the things that really knocked you off course, those you learned things in those moments that actually apply now. So yeah, it's very, serendipitous. It worked out perfectly for me. So I'm glad to be here. I'm glad to be talking to you. And it's a good career and a good way of, I don't know what, putting it forward or, sharing what I know with other people. And I do enjoy that.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think it's one thing to be successful or have a business that was working, but to actually be able to pay it forward and
Yeah.
actually enjoy helping other people, and like in our case, we're talking authors.
Mhm.
It's a lot of fun. And me and you kind of talked a little bit off air. You do client work, so you asked if I did client work, and I was like, yeah, actually, it's the bulk of my business is client work. Um, and you mentioned something that was really cool. You're like, you actually get kind of real time when you're working one on one with clients or whatever the avenue is you're doing it. You get these
Mhm.
real time issues or problems that come up or questions from these people that you can address and actually help them like right then and there, which to me is probably more beneficial than being like, oh, hey, here's a course. Your issue might not be addressed until hour 7,
Right.
but
Right.
when you're doing one-on-one client work, you can actually help them in real time at that moment,
Yeah.
whatever it is they need right then and there, which I think is really cool.
It is cool. And it's what I find interesting too is that everybody, you do the reason courses work, I think, if they're done right, is that after years of client work, you do see patterns. So there is a repetitive, this is where people are bottlenecking every time, every time, every time. So you can relieve a little bit of that tension and not have to use so much of your own time by creating a course that resolves those issues for people. But like you said, there's huge benefit in the real-time interaction, the nuances of how people are approaching things, because like we had said off air too, over 10 years I've seen a change in the market, in the environment, I guess, around authors, uh their understanding where they're sitting when it comes to marketing and stuff. We're still not there yet because I do a lot of work trying to convince authors that it's not the worst thing in the world to have to market yourself, or self
No.
promotion is yucky, and we'll talk about that I think a bit today. But it's a I always find it fascinating to find where people get, where they stop and they say, okay, I will, this far and no further. That's I'm not going to do that. That's something I'm not comfortable with. And then a little bit of chit chat, a little bit of working around it, and reframing, and then they're open to it again. It's not something, right, because sometimes you just don't get the right information, or you get what condensed or kind of misleading information a little bit online, that it appears a certain way, but when in reality they can, there's ways to work around things that make them more comfortable just dealing with creative people, as opposed to the sort of the analytical business mind, right?
Yeah,
And
you
not to say
use
they don't have that, but
yeah, and a lot of them don't though, but and some of them do. But you used a word in there that I think is really crucial is reframing. So like
yeah,
it's not that they haven't been taught something before or they haven't seen the information, but a lot of times it just takes the right person saying it the right way for
yeah,
something to click, right? So like
yeah,
you see these bottleneck problems, kind of every author having the same issue at the same spot. And they're like, I'll get here and then I can't or I won't. It's like then the right person comes in, reframes it and explains it in a way that's not so scary
yeah,
or overwhelming, and they're like, oh, that's not so bad, and then boom, they take off to the next, wherever
yeah.
maybe
And
the next
that's,
obstacle is. Right.
yeah, whatever it is. And that's the thing, like, so the one thing that I see a lot of, and I still see it, which I find frustrating because I'm doing my best to get everybody over that thing, but it's the sort of the cart before the horse idea, or people are doing a lot of tactics and a lot of the end stuff, what I wouldn't talk about for, far into the client work, or even in a course or something like that. It's the very end stuff, which is what they tend to focus on, which is the marketing tactics, the small things. When should I send my email, or this, really weird things to me that are so far away from what you really need to be focusing on as a newer author, or even if you're finding you've been doing it for a while but you're kind of stuck. And it's the foundational stuff, the you well, I would consider it sort of typical, foundational business stuff that you need to do before you get anywhere near, advertising or tactics or things that cost you money and quite a bit of time, but you've left sort of a whole leaky boat for everything to pile into, right? So if you're not doing the foundational stuff, you're not ready for the drawing the traffic in, all that kind of stuff, then you're wasting your time, and you will feel like you're treading water. And that's almost always the case, that they're wondering, well, why isn't this working? I'm trying. And that's the reason. So there's all that takes is one person to go, well, plug up all the holes, and then all of a sudden, like you said, then they take off, then everything starts working. So that's why it's fun for me, because it's relatively easy for me to see, and I know that it's very hard for them to see because they're so in it, right?
Yeah, when you're so in it, sometimes you just need an extra pair of eyes or a different perspective to see things.
Mhm.
And like so the whole point of this summit with everybody talking is, you know, how do we better market your books as a fiction author? So because a lot of things can differ, a lot of things are similar across fiction and nonfiction, but since we're focusing specifically on fiction, I know your big things like branding
Mhm.
and stuff like that. If it still is, I'm pretty sure it still is.
Yep.
And then like I think part of that is when you brand yourself, then it's like how do you make that brand work by connecting directly with your readers? And
Right.
you had mentioned something, and I think you had sent this in. something to me before, but like an author centric approach. What do you want to expand on? Like, what do you mean
Yeah.
by that when you're talking about directly connecting with your readers and kind of using an author centric approach?
Well, if you're connecting, okay, so normally what people tend to do is they will do sort of an author centric approach, right? Which means most of the stuff is coming from you, and sort of the more traditional marketing where you're, instead of you are trying to attract a bunch of attention, you're making a lot of noise, you're on every platform you can find, that sort of thing. But and so you're trying to get attention, and sometimes you do, but it's sort of, now things are shifting. We're finding personal branding is a big thing, and branding's always been in my mind, it's always been an important thing. But nowadays we're seeing even the biggest corporations are trying to real hard to have sort of a personal brand, and they have their own feelings, and they have, you know what I mean? So they're really trying to show, I have a personality, I have, a moral compass, I have certain things that I do, look at me for these kind of things, right? So they're trying to get that same connection that authors can very, very easily get, because they can go basically direct to their readers. But not just that, it's more, so not author centric approach, it's a reader centric approach, which is,
Reader centric. That's right.
yeah, so it's slightly different, in the sense that what you're doing, if you're adopting a reader centric approach, it's not just a trendy concept, but it's like a strategic imperative for authors, right? So in the traditional author reader kind of relationship, the communication would flow sort of primarily in one direction, right? From the author to the reader. I've got a book out, here it is, this is the price, blah blah blah, right? It just kind of, the information is just coming straight out. A reader centric approach would flip this dynamic, right? So by actively listening to your readers, responding to their comments, incorporating their feedback, you create more of a sense of involvement and participation. So we've been doing that for the last little bit, where we, especially me, I've been coaching authors to do this, to connect more with the readers. But now you're taking it kind of to the next level. So engaged readers are more likely to interact and engage and become part of like a vibrant community, and that's what we've been striving for a while. But we're finding now there's even a shift, like there's no longer sort of the passive consumers, just even in generally speaking, it's people want to be more active participants in brands that they interact with and what they consume, that sort of thing. They really have an opinion about it, right? And we're seeing that because of social media, everybody's got to, say what they think about things. So you're finding that all of these discussions and thoughts and ideas around things, they're all starting to, focus this in. So your engaged readers are more likely to convert into loyal supporters, right? So you want that. You want the advocacy. You want, them leaving positive reviews and attending book events. You want those sort of avid, super keen fans to be sort of the center of your readership. You might have a few on the outside that kind of come and go, whatever, but for the most part, you're looking for that tribe or that really strong support. And in order to do that, we've got to shift things a little bit. So, all right, so to define it, so a reader-centric approach, in essence, is a paradigm shift in how you engage with your audience. So it's a strategy that places the reader's needs and desires and experiences, their motivations, all at the forefront. So focusing on your readers as individuals, each with their own unique preferences, their emotions, whatever, all those sorts of things. You really need to understand what they want, what they need, and then prioritize those needs, right? You understand them, you see them there, you've done all the work to figure it out. So you know what they desire, especially with fiction, all of these things, what they're interested in, what they're looking for. And this is what you use in order to work on your marketing and communication strategies, right? It's all incorporated in, you weave it in there. And so you're moving from transactions, like the buy my book thing. We kind of got over that a little bit, but we just cloak it in my books, now on, for 99 or 99 cents or whatever, right? So we haven't really moved away from the buy my book thing. We're just nicer about how we say it in an email or something. So move away from the transactions into developing relationships with readers, shifting the focus from self-promotion, which nobody seems to like, to addressing readers' pain points and like I said, their motivations. So you're not really selling books per se. It's just a happy byproduct of truly understanding your reader and what they want. Does that make sense? So it's not about, and this doesn't mean that you have to disregard your own goals and objectives. It just means that you have to do the work to define and attract the people whose needs and desires align with what you have to offer. So, what they want and what you just happen to have to offer perfectly fits together. And then once you understand them, all the rest becomes a whole lot easier. Is that clear?
Yeah, 100% spot on. Because and
Okay.
this is what I do with my email list is I always try to include them with questions about, like I just sent an email out yesterday and I was like, hey, when you're reading a fiction book like a novel, do you prefer, if it's in a series, do you prefer a cliffhanger that pulls you into the next story, or do you
Mhm.
prefer all the loose ends and things to be tied up, and then the next story might have the same character, but it's a different plot? And you'll be
Yeah.
surprised at the number of answers you get that vary. But it's like, and I got like 40 responses in like 3 hours, just like that. And it was like one after another, and they eat it up. And this isn't the first time I've done this. Like I try to include them as much as I can by asking questions that get them engaged, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it doesn't necessarily mean I'm going to like take that feedback to heart and be like, well, if I write this way, but I see, a handful of people are saying this, I'm not going to change my writing style drastically just to meet those few people. But now I have a really good overview of what my broad audience is kind of
Mm-hmm.
looking for and what they like and enjoy, and maybe more importantly, what they don't like and enjoy, right?
Yeah.
So I'm curious, like when you're talking this author centric versus reader centric, one question is, should you see a difference in your success in terms of your marketing efforts and sales when you switch from the author centric to reader centric? And then the second part of that question is, where's the best place to kind of do that? Social media, email, both?
Mhm.
Like, what do you see works?
Well, okay. So basically, the whole thing, when you make this shift, and for some people, it'll be subtle because they've been sort of, intuitively doing this because they, like I said, most people aren't the hard sales. They're not, they just don't feel comfortable pushing in that way, right? So this is a something that either they've avoided everything or they've gently done this sort of without really realizing it. What we want to do though is we want to focus all our energy into that. And yes, it should automatically be woven in everything. So when I talk about personal branding or the branding for like author branding, your website, your copy, your message, everything. Okay, let me explain it this way. So like I said, I just finished this course and that there's 4 parts to it. So think the first part is identify. So before you do anything, you've got to identify exactly who it is that you want to reach. And this is one big thing too that I'm finding in client work is people kind of know, sort of, this area, maybe these people, but they haven't talked to them. They don't know anybody who is actually that person. They're really lucky if they happen to be within sort of their own target audience, but because then they at least have their own opinions about stuff. But for the most part, they're kind of flying blind, and it's so unfair to yourself to not know exactly who it is you're trying to reach. So there's a whole network of things you want to do after that, or in order to find that person, partly like what you're saying, that really helps. Asking a lot of questions, surveying or polling or beta stuff or anything like that. Anything where you can get a real live person to actually answer a question is beautiful. And then you just got to sort of look at that and say, okay, is this actually who I want to deal with? Are these the kind of emails, right? You want people connecting with you via email. Do you want to, do you want these kind of people on your list? Do you want to be engaging with these people all day, every day? Because this is the type of people you have to think about. And not everybody is going to be for you. Not everybody's going to love what you do or the work that you do. And that's fine because there's more than enough to go around. So you have to figure that out first. The next step after you identify exactly who those people are, then you have to understand them. Like I said, so you're focusing, that's where this really comes into this reader centric approach, is that you look at them and you know them better than they know themselves in a way, right? You understand all of it and you are happy to it's not exactly just accommodating them because, like I said, you already know what you're good at. You already know what you offer, what you bring to the table, your worldview, the way you want your work to resonate with people. So you're looking that's part of the first part is you're looking for that crowd. Now you're trying to dig a little deeper and understand them better. Then the next step, the way that ties in, is you differentiate yourself. That's where the branding and stuff comes in because then you can say, okay, this is what I have to offer. This is how I'm going to show you that succinctly and carefully and with great care. This is what it is, right? And with fiction authors, the beauty of fiction authors, and they miss this all the time because everybody thinks it's a little bit easier to market if you market nonfiction books or write nonfiction books. But and there is some ways that that's a little bit easier. But when you have a storytelling background, when you can create whole worlds out of nothing, which is fascinating to me, but people can do it. And you use all of that in your marketing. So think of your brand, your origin story, or sort of your brand story. So you'd share your personal journey as an author. You explain why you started writing, the challenges you faced, the pivotal moments in your career, all that. But and I don't want to say dramatize it, but you make it a story. It's a big deal, right? You didn't just get here, but like what you're saying, this whole story, weird stuff goes down, and it needs to be documented and shown in a way that is compelling to other people, and they will get that. It will resonate with them if it's the right group. So all of this comes into differentiating, positioning. Where's your book positioned? Where are you positioned in the market? All that kind of stuff. And then the last thing, the very last thing is engagement. When you start focusing on, okay, knowing all this and what I can bring to the table, okay, how do I want to reach these people? How am I talking to them? And then again with the stories. So are you introducing your readers to the characters in your books, and you're not doing it just through book descriptions, all boring, whatever. You need that, right? You still have to be a little boring. You still have to be a little bit business minded, right? And just say, okay, this is what you're going to get, and this is the price. But you can really draw them in, and storytelling techniques, to me, are what marketing is all about. Marketing, well, not all, but mostly about, right? Because you're trying to draw people in and attract people, and give it an experience and a whole story around it. And marketing companies will spend thousands trying to find people who can do just that. So if you've already have that skill set, again, when we talk reframing, think of it as a creative outlet. Again, so it's just as creative as your book, the marketing side of things. And if you think of it like that, then there is no self-promotion and begging and cajoling and all the icky marketing stuff, right? You're literally just painting a picture of it. You're showing, not telling, right? What the experience is when a reader comes into the fold, into your community. This is what they get. If you can do that well, then I think it get better exponentially in terms of marketing and sales.
Yeah, I agree with everything you're saying. And I think two huge pieces of that, and I talk about this, if you're listening or watching this, you're like, oh gosh, he's talking about this again. I talk about it all the time because I think it's so important. I use it as pillars in my own business. I use it as pillars in my life, for my family, for myself. It's being transparent and being authentic, because
Mhm.
I think part of branding and being able to differentiate yourself is I don't like saying being your authentic self. That sounds so like, it sounds like such a woke term, but like being like, you have to be authentic, because like I can't be Kimberly, and you can't be Jan, and Tom can't be me. So it's like you
Mhm.
have to embrace like your personality, how you talk, the things you like, your stories. And one thing I love doing in my email marketing is, and not everybody agrees with this, or maybe a better way to say it is, not everybody feels as comfortable doing this as I do, because I'm an
Mhm.
open book. I mean, I shared something with you off camera. I'm an open book. It doesn't really matter to me. So I share these things with my audience, because what that does is I'm looking at it as not a way to like hard sell them or like use some kind of tragic story to get them to buy my book. The whole goal is to get them some insight into who I am, because we know the know, like, and trust factor is just so pivotal if you're wanting to have a long-term career, because people aren't, because you'd mentioned this a couple times, turning a reader into like a lifelong fan or a
Mhm.
raving fan, or people who want to stay in your world and your community.
Yeah.
I don't think you can do that without being authentic and transparent and showing them who you are bit by bit. You don't
Mhm.
have to get crazy like me. I mean, for anybody who's on
Yeah.
my list, like, exactly what I'm talking about. But I mean, do you think that's important as well?
I do. I think the interesting thing is, so yes, there can be some boundaries in the sense that you don't need to tell them everything, every single thing, but you'd be surprised at, and I know a lot of people have trouble with this, but sometimes it is your weird, it's your quirky stuff, it's your the flaws or the things you'd be like, that's the last thing I want people to know about. Those are some of the most important ways to connect with people, the most real, the most that evokes the most emotion with people. You'll get a response if you're crying because your cat just passed away or something, and you that happens to come out in an email. You would be surprised at how much sympathy, how much uh, that was a real connection and people will respond to it. And you're not doing it to manipulate, none of this. And again, that's the thing with marketing too, is it feels, if you do it wrong, it feels bad. It
Yeah.
feels, so you'll know if you're doing it wrong, because then you feel bad. It feels like manipulation. It feels like you're hiding real stuff and putting out what you want people to see, or just the best stuff, or any of that. So you want to avoid that. But it is about, you're not, it's the same as a story. You're not trying to manipulate people into feeling for your characters. Really, you're trying to take them on a journey, and it's the same idea. So if you think of it that way, again, I think maybe this is the whole point of this one. This talk is about reframing. Reframe the way you think about things, right? Rethink how you approach it, because it changes everything for you. It turns it in from a horrible, um, degrading process, right? A lot of others are just horrified by it, to something that is so creative and emotionally rewarding, that it's worth doing, and it's worth doing well. And like I said, if it feels good, you're probably doing it right. If it feels bad, if you feel like, that's probably not the right, at least not for you. It might work for some other author, but for you, it's not the right way. So,
Yeah, and it can feel bad. So I think that this would be a good kind of thing to give people perspective. Like, there's a difference. Like, it feeling bad and icky is different than it maybe being uncomfortable for the first time. So, like,
right.
maybe it's your first time getting people in your world on your email list, and you've never really opened up online before. That can be scary. So
Mm-hmm.
it's like that could feel strange and like new territory. That's different than it feeling like you read that to yourself, or you sent it out and you see it and maybe you're getting overwhelming responses that aren't good. It's like you go back and you're like, oh man, I did that wrong. Like that's not uncomfortable. I just did that badly. Right. So
Yeah.
there is a difference. Just because it's
Yeah.
uncomfortable
Yeah.
doesn't mean it's not gonna work or it can't work. Um, I'm a huge believer in stepping outside your comfort zone.
Yeah. Yeah.
I always tell people, and I didn't make this up, I got this from somewhere, but I think your comfort zone are where your dreams go to die, because I don't think if you can expand outside your, I know it sounds extreme, if you can't expand outside your comfort zone, that it's called a comfort zone for a reason. There's no
Yeah.
growth there, right?
That's right.
So I
That's
think it's
exactly
okay
right.
to step outside and test new things and figure out what works. And not everything's going to work. And I think it's okay. That's learning. You're learning from your
Mm-hmm.
your your ups and downs and stuff like that. I think it's a really important thing for people. I think some people miss that sometimes.
Yeah. And I don't think, I mean, there can be some mistakes that are fatal, so there is a risk, but most times you're not, um, especially when you're just trying something, you're not betting the farm on it, or you're not going all the way. So the risk is usually, you can kind of mitigate it a little bit and say, okay, I'm going to try this. I'm going to see. And yeah, there might be some sweating, and you might be like, okay, I don't know if I can totally do this, right? um Sometimes. But for me, it was live webinars. Those are a nightmare as far as and that's not just because technology, right? So for me, live webinars are heinous, but I'll do them every once in a while, just to traumatize myself, and like you said, grow a little, like just do something. And because if you avoid too much of it, then you end up not doing anything, right? Like you said, if you don't really like social media and you don't like this, some things are just not a good fit, even brand wise, and those you need to be clear about. Because if you're just not, TikTok is not for me. I'm not, even my kids make fun of it. They're like, you cannot do anything on TikTok. And I know this. TikTok, if there might be a way to do it that I could make it work. It isn't the dances, it isn't the matching the musical or the side by any of that stuff. That's not for me. So and my brand won't fit there either, right? I'm not going to, there might be some younger authors that I could, draw in that way, but it would be so uncomfortable for me. I'm sure they would be cringing at whatever I would do. So and I'm not that humorous of a brand, right? So I can't pull that off where people can laugh at me and that's cute. It's not, I don't want that. So there's lanes that you kind of go in. You grow in those lanes, like you don't, you expand in those areas, but there is some things that are just not a good fit. And like you said, there's some people in, even responding to your emails, that maybe long term these people aren't going to be there forever. Maybe they aren't the true, brand advocates for you. They're not going to be the people who, live and die for your work. And that's fine, right? Because they can come and go. It might be that you evolve and you see that over time, that you lose people because you've changed and your work has changed and it's gotten better, hopefully, and it's evolved into a different area, or you're trying new things as well with Maybe you're doing more than just the writing. Maybe you're kind of building a whole business on the back end or something. So whatever that is, all of that is okay as long as you're somewhat in control of it, in the sense that it's intentional, right? It's when your brand is taken over by who knows what, you didn't realize it was important, and off it goes. And people are making because they are. People will make judgments. They'll decide whether they like you, not like you. If you look good in that hat, right? They'll be like, oh, look at this guy with his hat, right? So some people just make judgments, and there's nothing you can do about it. But much of what you do online, you can somewhat um, style and or place there yourself. So what you say, what you do, how you look, how you present yourself, for the most part, is going to be somewhat controlled, and people will take it as they see fit. It's the same as your work too, right? You can do the best you can with your fiction novel, and most people will get it. A few people will have some weird issue with something in it that you didn't even see coming, and then a few other people will think it's the worst thing that's ever been created. And okay, so you just let all of that, most of that, go. Some of it you can, if it's criticism that you should take on board, fine. Like you said, sometimes you do screw up, and then what are you going to do? You correct that mistake and move forward, and that makes you real. That makes you a human, because I haven't met anybody yet who can skate through things so far and not have made any mistakes in their own life, right? So you apply all this, and I think, again, getting back to sort of the reader centric part of it, is that you are not throwing away anything that's important to you. So this isn't the idea that um, you're kind of a martyr, or you give everything up that you creatively that's important to you so that you can meet the needs of a reader. That isn't it. The biggest point is that you find those readers that align with what you're doing in a way that makes it a perfect fit, as opposed to you trying to wedge yourself into something, or vice versa, right? Trying to convince them that they'll like what you have when they're just not a good fit. And then everything, it works out much better that way, much easier for authors when they do it that way.
Yeah, I never try to fit into a mold I don't belong in. I tried it early on when I first started this business side of things, and I quickly realized, like, not only can people probably see this isn't me, but like, talk about branding. Like, I'll get on calls with people after a summit. They're like, "Oh, you're wearing the hat and the headphones you did in the talk." Like, this is my
See,
brand. You are
there you
seeing
go.
what you get. Like, this
Yeah.
is who I am. This is how I walk around the house. This is how I go out. Obviously, not my headphones, but like, um, so like, I quickly learned like I just need to be myself. And
Hmm.
you had mentioned something in there that I think is really important. Like, I talked about, you need to be able to step outside your comfort zone, but also just as importantly, you need to know your lane. Like, you
Yeah.
need to understand where do you fit? Where are you comfortable? Even if it's just where are you comfortable starting? And then
Hmm.
you can expand later on as you develop, and maybe you as yourself or your brand grows kind of outside of what you originally had planned for yourself. And that's okay too. And like you
Hmm.
mentioned, people come, people go. Um, but there's something that I really really like, and I've mentioned it on calls before, but like, it's called the serenity prayer, but it's like, take the whole religion thing out of it, but it's just like,
Hmm.
grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. So it's like,
Hmm.
there are things, no matter how much you try and pry and stress over, you can't do anything about it. Then
Yeah.
there's things that can be done that most people aren't doing that you need to take action on. And then
Hmm.
more importantly, you need to know what the difference is between those two, because that's
Yeah.
what's going to move the needle, not only
Hmm.
short term, but long term.
Plus, it affects your mindset, right? And that's another huge chunk of all of this, or at least, you know, when we're talking about authors and trying to manage this. Um, the way you frame it, again, the way you, just like you're saying, if you can control it, then tackle those things. Why obsess and worry and fret about the things you absolutely have no control over? And there's so many things you have control over that you'll be busy. So you don't need to worry about the other stuff. There's just nothing to be done about it. And this is something that I try, even in, in real life, right, in my own life, to try and apply. um because I'm a parent, and there's things, right, that I think that are my responsibility, until a child points out, back off, it's not your then you're like, okay, fine, right? And then you just have to let it go. I've got older kids, so they can make their own choices. And you, just because you've had the opportunity of having, a life or whatever, and made all your mistakes, doesn't mean that other people don't get to do that too. So this is the sort of thing that you have to give your readers credit for being able to understand that you're growing and that you're learning, if it's right at the beginning and stuff like that. and that you will make changes and they'll seem really off character or off brand or whatever, because you're trying to test that out. Okay, who am I? And it's not an easy thing to know exactly who am I and how would I like to portray that today? And is that going to be the same a year from now, 5 years from now? That's a tricky thing to do. It's not that easy. So between that and trying to figure out who your readers are, like I said, there's a lot of work to be done foundationally first, then your website, right? And you work your way through these steps. You are not worried about when you're sending that email out or which social media platform is ideal and at what time and what dance on TikTok I want to do. All of those things are very much down the road a ways. Even for me, advertising, because and social media is a dodgy place to be now. It seems everything is kind of shifting to me away from that. So there's other ways that you can um, gain traction and sort of develop things, but advertising is fine if you've got these other things dialed in. Otherwise, I find it very expensive for the people that I work with. It's a very expensive test to see how bad your foundation is, because you just throw money into a hole, right? So I don't know if you found that with your people too, or the way that you're doing your business, because I find that I'm usually waving people off that initially for those that haven't been doing it for a long time.
And I do the same thing. I'm the exact same way
Yeah.
because I tell people, they're like, I always get this question. Like they come to me for email marketing and list building, but everybody has the, what about ads? I'm like, okay, well,
Mm-hmm.
where are you at right now? And they all tell me, and I'm like, you're not ready for ads, in
Yeah.
my opinion, because like you said, you're just gonna be throwing money down a hole. Because not only are there like foundational things that need to be in place across your authoring business, but like in your specific genre, your cover needs to be right, your title, your blurb, you have to have
Yeah.
good reviews, enough of them. Like all these pieces have to be in line and connected across, or like
Mm-hmm.
you could spend $1,000 a day on ads. It's just never going to work. Your ROI is going to be terrible and you're going to
Yeah.
be so frustrated, where all that money and time could be used elsewhere that's going to give you a better ROI right now.
Yeah.
But also in the long term. I don't know if you experience this with your client work and stuff like that, but most of the authors I come across and talk to, kind of broadly speaking, there's not a lot of long term thinking. Like
Yeah.
they're kind of in the now, which is cool. There's stuff that needs to be done and attacked and taken care of now, but a lot of times there's not that long term approach where they're thinking a year, 2, 3, 5 years down the road, where the big things could really happen as things are being connected correctly.
Mm-hmm.
So I think if you can look at these marketing efforts and your brand building and getting these, like you said, your foundational pieces in line now,
Yeah.
the payoff for the long term is where you're
Mm-hmm.
really going to see those returns.
Yeah. Which is hard, and I get it, because you're in a position now. A lot of the authors that I see, they're in a position now where it's not a make or break, but I feel that they have pressure that either it's got to work or it doesn't. And if it doesn't work and I can't make money, I've launched it, if I can't even make my money back on the cover, or right, they've put some sort of, whether they have or their family or however, whatever their situation, there's a lot riding on it, which is a little bit unfair, because that's not how businesses generally work. Like you wouldn't throw up a Starbucks on the corner and say, okay, well, we got a week. And if it ain't breaking even or making more, then too bad, right? So you just can't with business. It's a tricky thing like that. And I get that there is pressures financially and otherwise, for it to make a move right away. And sometimes that's where ads and things like that, you can quickly do something, and sometimes that's where you're at, and sometimes that's okay, but you have to, at somewhere in there at some point, add in, like you say, the long-term strategy that builds relationships over time, not just with your readers but industry, right? If with other authors, with just other players in the industry that make influencers, whatever, all of it comes into play, and nothing relationship wise is done in a week, right? It's all got to be done over the long term, and it's got to be built, um, like you said, authentically, which is, yeah, not a great word for that, but it is what it is, right? It is, you're truly trying to make a connection that's real, and you're doing it not just, okay, well, what do I get out of it, right? You're looking at, okay, what can I give to them that makes sense for them, works for me too, which is a bonus, but really it is, what I'm trying to do is create a connection with someone that I will value, and that they will value me over a period of time. None of that happens quickly, and that's very frustrating, but it is something that has to be taken in consideration. And if you do like I said, the foundational stuff, um, it doesn't have to be perfect, but it has to be better than what I've been seeing, right? It's got to be better than what they come to me with. So we do that. Then yes, you can do, if you need to make money quickly, or if you want to just get the workout quickly, we can do that. There are strategies, but like, I'm with you on the long term is better if you can hang in there. And if you view it like that, I think your whole business, your whole author business becomes better for it over time. Your work and the business itself.
Yeah, I agree. If you try to, I think about it as if you're trying to solve a long-term problem with a short-term solution, it's like slapping a band-aid on a gunshot wound. It's like,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
it may not be bleeding as bad, but you still got to go to the emergency room if you don't want to die. Like there are certain things that come up that could be broken or need to be fixed that need to be addressed in a more serious, um, manner that are gonna take care of issues right now that will also pay dividends in the long run. Because, like I said,
Mhm.
I just see all these people want these short-term wins and these short-term grabs, and it's like, yeah, you're going to get these wins along the way, but those are just small wins that build up to the longer goal or dream, or whatever it is you have, and it's subjective
Mhm.
to every author. It's not the same for everybody.
Right.
But the same pieces need to be in place, and a system still needs to be in place regardless of what your end goal is.
Mhm. Or at least the awareness that there's the two paths, right? Or the two components, because you can do both. Hard to do, but not impossible. It's just harder to do initially when you're first starting out, because then you've got a lot of plates in the air kind of thing. But you at least have to know that there is two concepts there, because many think they're doing long term, but they're doing the short term strategies, right? So they think they're working towards a future in one direction, but they're really just doing a lot of short term stuff that might even, and that's where you tend to, well, not always, but sometimes that's where the blowups happen, right? Where you really go in a wrong direction because you're trying to do things quickly, or you're trying to do things without having, all the layers nailed down. So it's just not as forgiving, right? There's almost always money involved. They're coming to you because kind of you've paid for that, right? You haven't earned it, you've paid for it, which eat both fine in business. It's just you need to understand as an author the difference, and then your intention and the work you put behind it has to reflect that, and then that way that everything's fine, right? If you know, okay, that's what I'm doing, then that's fine. But the second you stop your ads, well, then everything dries up. Almost everything dries up, right? You don't really see that that's built a community really in some way. You've sold some books, which is fine, also good. But again, to me, the understanding that there's more than one way, and you've got to be doing the right tactics for the right uh, end goal that you're looking for. So
Yeah.
that's my advice there.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. I'm right on the same page with you there. Okay, so to respect your time here, because I know we don't have 7 hours like I would like to have, as people know and grown accustomed to with my interviews. um, is there? I think we covered a lot and definitely talked about the things we wanted to talk about, and added some other stuff in there too that was valuable. So before I let you off the hook here, is there anything else that maybe you want to touch back on or reiterate or maybe mention that we didn't get to before I release you back into your life?
Into the wild.
Yeah.
I think just to keep it, like, to bring it back to our sort of initial focus on the reader centric approach, is to focus on the idea that um, forging these connections, these direct connections, first of all, understand the gift that is. I think, I don't know that people, again, if you don't have a business background, you may not have ever noticed that there was a time when people didn't have direct access to each other in the way that we do now, right? I know my kids have no idea what that means. um, Even watching a TV series or something, they don't even know what it's like to wait the next week for the show to I'm like, I'm that old. I remember having to wait for Friends or something, right? You have to wait, you have to be patient. We don't have any of that now. You can be in direct contact with your readers in real time. If you can't see them in real life, you can be literally in their inbox. You can be, on social media, whatever. You can be there and connected with them, and don't take it for granted. You don't want to think that you have to be, right? I guess I'm giving kind of mixed messages. You want to be directly connected with them. That doesn't mean you give yourself over to them, right? It's not that kind of again, no martyring or anything like that. You have an objective, and you want a connection with these people, a real connection with readers. And it's crucial for building a loyal and engaged audience, right? So you want to do the things that you're good at, you want to enjoy it, you want the right people. So embrace the storytelling. Like if we're talking specifically fiction authors, you're embracing that storytelling. If you've got that skill set, that should be one of the, best things in your arsenal to be moving you forward in your career, because you can personalize your communication, you can prioritize their needs and desires, and you can weave it all into an emotional experience. You can show them exactly, like I said, show, don't tell them what they're going to get with your work. And if you can do that and create this sort of lasting impact, and it'll establish you as an author who, one, truly appreciates their readership, but gives you the credibility, like you said, the know, like, and trust factor, that you've got the credibility, the trust of your readers. That's a hard thing to shake. You're going to have to really screw up to mess that up. And that bodes well for the long-term um, duration of your career. And it will make it much more enjoyable than what authors, I think, deem it now, which is, I love to write and then I have to do the marketing stuff. And if we can change that, then I'll be happy. You'll probably be happy. I mean, and they'll certainly be happy. Writers who feel that there's nothing fun in marketing will at least enjoy it a little. And that's my goal.
Yeah, and just to kind of just to round that point out, because I, like I said, I've said this multiple times in this interview, like I'm right on the same page with you in a lot of these things. But like developing that connection with them, it needs to happen right away. So as soon as somebody gets into your world, like you need to connect with them as quickly as you can. So I've
Yeah.
explained this on workshops and master classes in the past, where it's like picture it like in like for me it's like your onboarding sequence when somebody first comes into your email list, like giving them that first taste of who you are right away and
Mm-hmm.
having them connect with you, ask a simple question, stuff like that. So it's like think of it as like a first date. Like if you were sitting down across from somebody for the very first time, your ultimate goal is making the best impression, your best first impression that you can with that person. And
Mm-hmm.
that's how you need to think about it when your readers come into your world, because they're constantly, if you're doing it right, new people are coming in all the time.
Yeah.
And a lot of this is automated, which we don't have time to talk about today, but like that needs to be a part of the process where like you're connecting and you're showing them who you are and they're getting a sense of who you are as a person, so you can build that know, like, and trust factor really fast. And
Mm-hmm.
then you just build on that for the duration of however long they're with you, and you just carry that through however long you're going to be an author and how long you're
Yeah.
going to have a community of readers and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's just kind of like adding a
Well,
little bit on top of what you said.
yeah. And okay, and here's another layer. So
Mhm.
imagine your first date, she or he is waiting, you know, walks into the restaurant and sees you from afar, but you don't know that. So, how are you behaving before you even recognize that someone has noticed you, or that the person that you're trying to build a relationship has even walked into the room? So, that's the next layer. So, everything that you do, you don't know when people, where they're going to hit, which page of your website they're going to stumble upon, which interview they're going to see you on, which blog posts they're going to read. You have no idea, because they can come from basically anywhere, have some sort of touch point with you, right? So every touch point, every part that you can manage to uh, have that consistent message, the consistent look and feel and experience, it all needs to be, that's what I'm saying, it all needs to be there, because people will be judging from afar sometimes. And I know this because I'm more introverted. So okay, I don't stalk, but it's definitely some research going on beforehand, right? Where I'll check and look and see. And I make a decision before I've actually even talked to somebody. So some readers are going to be like that too, right? They're going to decide just from the cover. They're going to decide just from the reviews. They're going to, so they're, everything is sort of it's all there for people to see, whether you're aware of it or not. So yes, I totally agree with you that once they come into your orb and you're aware of it, then you treat them, appropriately. But you've got to also think, how do I act when nobody's looking, right? And then how do I act when they might be looking? And so all of that has to be, and that's where that authenticity comes in. That's what the realness, because you can fake the picture on your blog, or that kind of thing, but you can't over time, over every kind of medium, uh, fake that persona that isn't real you, right? So you might as well just start with what you got, work on that. And yeah, so yes, I agree with you totally, but just imagine that next layer where even that is, there's things even out of your control that you don't even know is happening. So everything has to be kind of in place,
Yeah.
because people will be coming from wherever, right?
Yeah, you better keep it authentic from the jump, or people you'll get
Yeah,
found out
you'll
eventually.
get found out.
Listen,
Yeah.
it happens. You can't hide from it, right?
No, not with the internet nowadays. You can't
No.
even, no, no, no. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's got to be
impossible.
you. Embrace the, like I said, embrace the weird, embrace the things that you're like, oh, I wish nobody, that's a quirk I wish could stay hidden forever, but nope, it'll be, and honestly, it'll probably be the thing that people know you for over time. It'll be the thing that they appreciate the most about you. So sometimes that works in your favor. So, hmm,
Yeah, I think that's awesome. Okay, that's a good
yeah.
point to end on. I won't add another layer to the layers we've already added on. um,
Okay.
okay, yeah. So obviously, thank you for your time. So where would be the best
Yep.
place for people to go find you? I know you have an email list because I'm on it. So like, where
Yep.
could people go grab something to get on that list and kind of learn from you and see what you're doing and stuff like that?
Yeah, they can just go. My website is yourwriterplatform.com. So everything is there. There is a little gift, I guess, if you sign up there. But actually, if you scroll around, there's all sorts of, I have all sorts of things that people, depending on what you need or what you're interested in, you can have a look around and hop on the list with a bunch of different goodies. So there's that. And yeah, that's what I've got. Like I said, I've got some courses and stuff. So they'll find everything they need on the website. If you sign up, then yeah, the email is also got a lot of information. Sometimes there's free stuff in there too, but it's mostly just trying to help people, just like what we're talking here, trying to get yourself the foundational things in place, everything you need to set yourself for your author platform and business to grow long term.
Awesome. All right, cool. So that link will be down here below her video. So you don't have to remember it. It is in her background, your writer platform back there. I can see it. So we'll have that link below the video. So I think you should go check her out and get on her list, if even just to learn from her for a little bit, because I get her emails. They're great. They're informative. So I think everybody could learn something from there. So Miss Kimberly, I appreciate you being here. It was so great connecting again after
Yeah,
over a year.
a year. Yeah.
So I appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule and things you've got going on here. So this has been a lot of fun. So thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for the invite.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for coming. Hopefully, you learned something, and we'll see you in the next one.